What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're bringing you guys another Premier League table prediction video. A few days ago we asked AI to predict the Premier League table. That video's gone down really well. A big thank you for all your support on that. Go and check it out if you've not seen it already. And it came up with a few interesting ideas. Some were way wide of the mark, some were pretty accurate, I would say. But like we did when we've ran through the Championship, today we're going to be seeing what the bookies think where every team will finish in the Premier League this season. So we've taken the odds for who's the most likely odds on to win the title all the way down to the biggest outsiders, and we've compiled them in a table from top to bottom. So let's start from the bottom and see who are the biggest outsiders to win the Premier League. So in 19th and 20th joint at 1,500 to 1, it's Leicester City and Ipswich Town. No surprise that two of the three newly promoted sides are the biggest rank outsiders. I'm more surprised that all three aren't equal odds for this, but there is another side that's a little bit ahead of them, but it is completely obvious as to why this is. It doesn't need any explanation that the Premier League is as tough as ever, the step up from the Championship's as big as ever, and it's natural, especially after last season when the three teams who come up went straight back down, that could possibly happen again. So you can absolutely see why the bookies would have two newly promoted sides in the bottom two, and you won't be surprised to see who's above them. So at 17th and 18th, both at 1,000 to 1, you've got Nottingham Forest and Southampton. And I can't disagree with this either. I can't disagree with Southampton being alongside their other two newly promoted counterparts. I mean, I don't really see a standout between the three of them, if I'm honest. I think they've all got strengths, they've all got their own problems. Nottingham Forest are an interesting one, though, because they were the side who, again, it's hard to say whether they just survived or not last season because points deductions played a part, of course. The bottom three were adrift by quite some distance. But if it wasn't for them three promoted sides being so poor last season, Forest would have been the next side to fall through the trapdoor. So you'd think if one or two of Southampton, Leicester or Ipswich step up this season, the likely team that might get dragged into that bottom three is Nottingham Forest. In 16th on their own at 750 to 1, we've got Everton. Quite interesting that Everton are 16th. I would have had them a bit higher, and I will be bringing my own Premier League predictions myself soon, but I wouldn't have Everton this low. Now, understandably, yes, they've flirted with relegation season in, season out, and I'm quite lucky they've never fell through the trapdoor, if I'm honest, because I think it would have been catastrophic for Everton in the past few years. But I think they've just survived, and I think they've just gotten through this turbulent period and are probably edging towards a more stable looking Everton Football Club at this point. I still feel like there's a ceiling on what Sean Dyche's Everton can be, and if they do want to go back up to that next level, they will have to move on and get another manager in. But I do feel like he could maybe guide them to a 13th, a 12th. That could be their ceiling. I think they will be higher than 16th, and maybe this is a little harsh. In 13th, 14th and 15th, all tied at 500 to 1, we've got Wolves, Fulham and Brentford. Now, I would probably expect Wolves to have been a bit higher. I've got a bit more faith in Gary O'Neill than others that he would get Wolves into a more solid mid-table. I mean, I know 13th is still solid, but I'd maybe be expecting them to be more towards the top half of the bottom half, maybe fighting for a place in the top 10. But Fulham and Brentford, I absolutely see in and around them positions. Fulham are an interesting one. I think they might take a step forward this season, they might take a step back, they might stay exactly the same. I think they're just happy in a stable place right now, which is absolutely fine. Whereas Brentford, yeah, they had a bit of a drop-off last season, and maybe they have to be a little careful. You know, if they were to lose Ivan Toney, what would happen there? I still have enough faith that they'll stay up because Thomas Frank's a good manager and the club is well run enough, but it isn't, I think, out of the ordinary to expect Brentford. It could be one or two bad windows away from being in a bit of trouble, but that would be out of characteristic for them. So 15th, I think, is pretty much where I would have them. Same with Fulham. Maybe it's a bit harsh on Wolves. In 12th, on their own at 350 to 1, it's Bournemouth, pretty much matched up from last season, and I'm not in the camp that I think Bournemouth will replicate exactly what they did last season. I think Areola did an outstanding job, but to do that again will take some doing. I still think they'll be fine. I still think Bournemouth will be in the bottom half, but safe, and won't be dragged into too much trouble unless something goes drastically wrong. And I think a lot of people are just expecting Bournemouth to naturally have that drop-off and fall back out of the Premier League, but they seem more stable than they have in other times since they've come up in previous years. So 12th's a tad high, but I still think they'll be fine. In 11th at 300 to 1, they've got Crystal Palace. Now, I think this is where the AI put them as well. And yeah, I can see why. I think this is pretty accurate for Crystal Palace. They've always been a bottom half club, but have been always relatively safe. But we started to see something a little bit different last season from Oliver Glasner and his Palace team. And I can't lie, it's exciting. And I completely see why Palace fans would be getting excited too. But I still feel like there is a ceiling on where Palace can be. I can't see them breaking into the top 8, for example, but if they can break into the top half, great. 11th I still think would be a pretty solid finish for them. In 10th at 250 to 1, they've got West Ham United. Now, I would have West Ham higher. I said this in my prediction video. I like Lopetegui, and I feel like without European football, West Ham could surprise a few people this season. I do think bottom half would be considered not a failure, but a disappointing season. I do definitely feel like they'll be targeting top half. And 10th would be satisfactory, but I think they'd like to maybe be challenging to get back in and around the Europa Conference League again. So, yeah, I think 10th's a tad harsh on West Ham. I think they could be a little bit higher. Brighton are 9th at 150 to 1. Now, this is brave. I get Brighton are a well-run club, and who am I to question Brighton? Who's anyone to question Brighton and what they do and who they sell and who they bring in? And naturally, I think there's a bit more scepticism around the new manager, Julian Hertzler, I think it might be, who obviously is an extremely young manager, and entering the Premier League is a very, very big step up for anyone, never mind someone of his inexperience. So I think 9th's a brave call for Brighton. Obviously, they did drop into the bottom half last season. That was with De Zerbi. So to expect them to take a step forward, it's possible. Get into the top half, I'm not so sure. So for me, I think this is a tad brave. I think if he can get Brighton comfortably in the top half of the bottom half, in and around 10th, 11th, 12th, I think they'll be happy with that, although I'm not too sure they'll be this high. In 8th at 50 to 1, so there's a bit of a jump here in the odds. They've got Aston Villa. Now, I think this is a bit too low for me. I get it, they're in the Champions League, and we've seen with Newcastle in recent years, it can be tough to not only take the step up in quality. Obviously, it adds to the schedule. It asks a lot more and demands a lot more from your squad. You are essentially playing at the highest level of club football in Europe. You know, you're at the top end of the Premier League, albeit not fighting for the title, but you are in its top competition. So it's natural to expect a drop-off from Aston Villa. I think Newcastle finished 7th when they were in the Champions League. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but 8th, I think that's a tad low. Only 1 or 2 positions. I still think they'll be in a fight for the top 6. I don't think they'll replicate top 4. But to say they're going to be out of the European positions in an 8th, I think they'll be better than that under Unai Emery. In 7th at 33 to 1, they've got Tottenham. Now, this for me makes sense. This is where Tottenham are. You know, they don't seem quite good enough to break into the top 6, but I think anything low would be a huge failure for Tottenham. So, who knows? You know, Ange Postecoglou will would hope to make progress with this Tottenham side and maybe get them more comfortably into the top 6, maybe looking at the top 5. But I think it's quite competitive in and around that area of the league, and Tottenham could be one of the sides that just fall short and drop out into 7th. I'm not sold they'll finish above Aston Villa, for example, going back to my last point. So, yeah, it depends what happens above and below them, but 7th, it's probably an accurate expectation. In joint 5th and 6th, both at 25 to 1, you've got Manchester United and Newcastle United. And I think these are both pretty realistic, if I'm honest, both sides. I don't know about underachieved last season. I think Newcastle, obviously without the commitment of European football, I think it'll be a lot easier for them to take a step forward this season and get back towards the top 4, but I don't think they'll get in there. I think top 6 is a realistic expectation and one I think they should be aiming for, and the same for Manchester United. You know, they finished 8th last season. It was a terrible season, in fact. So I think when I maybe said Newcastle finished 8th, I think maybe Newcastle was 7th and Man United were 8th. But it was a disappointing finish for United. They shouldn't be anywhere near 8th, if I'm honest. So the fact they've kept Erik ten Hag's brave, will he turn things around? I'm not 100% convinced. I think they've only kept him on because he won the FA Cup, and I'm not too sure where a drastic improvement in the league is necessarily going to come from, but this is where they should be. 5th and 6th is more like it. Now in 4th, 20-1 is Chelsea, and I can't see this in a month of Sundays. I think Chelsea should be where they were last season. I think they should be top 6, top 7, especially with the money they've spent, maybe even top 5, but they're not going to get there with Enzo Maresca, in my opinion. He was not a convincing manager at championship level. I can see why a lot of Chelsea fans would maybe just look at it on paper, and maybe people who didn't watch the championship will just see that he managed the Leicester side that blew the championship away with 90 plus points. But let me tell you, he had probably the most expensive gifted squad ever seen at this level, and his team was far from convincing. I just don't think he's right for this level. You know, to have him in the Premier League, maybe you can say that's fine towards the lower end, but to be managing a side like Chelsea, who have spent so much money, have such high expectations, and, you know, should be in a different league to where he's been managing thus far, I can't see it working. I think this has gotten disaster written all over it, and I don't understand why they got rid of Pochettino when they did. I don't understand what happened there when they just started to seem like they were moving in the right direction. I've just got red flags and alarm bells going off all over that this is going to go disastrously wrong. So to have Chelsea 4th is very, very brave from the bookies. I don't think they'll be in the top 4 at all. And in the top 3, this is fairly obvious, I think, for everyone. The bookies say it, AI said it, I think most people are predicting it. In 3rd, it's Liverpool at 7-1. So a bit of a jump there into the top 3. I do think the top 3 are probably a little bit ahead of the rest. The top 2 definitely are. But 3rd's fair for Liverpool. I think they'd be expecting top 3. I think anything less would be disappointing. But they do have to maybe accept that there'll be a slight transition period here and that Arne Slot might need a little bit of time before Liverpool find their full top gear under him. I mean, if they hit the ground running, great. But even if they don't, I don't think they're top 2 anyway. But I think for him, you know, to maintain, I guess, the league finish of last season and to get Liverpool top 3 would be a very, very good start for him. And I think it would set him off on a good stead with Liverpool fans. So, yeah, as I said in the eye predictions, if I was a Liverpool fan, I wouldn't be expecting too much this season unless he surprises us, which could happen, I guess. But for me, 3rd should be exactly where they should be aiming for. And I think this is pretty much nailed on. And then in the top 2, so who are the bookies favouring? Obviously, when it comes to the AI predictions, they had Manchester City. Do the bookies disagree? No, they don't. Arsenal are second favourites for the title at 15-8, and this is understandable. And I'm going to pair that with Manchester City, who are the favourites, 11-10. They've won it, 6 of the last 7? Is it something like that? Still don't know the figure off the top of my head, but they've dominated, as we know, and regardless of the 115 charges, all the noise surrounding the club and the business and the ownership and everything, just looking at this from an on-pitch perspective, Manchester City have dominated. Pep Guardiola has proven that he can continually recycle his squad. They can maintain this incredible high standard, and their mentality to win is ridiculous. So that's why, of course, they are the safest bet to put your money on winning another Premier League title. For me as a neutral, I'd like to see a bit of a change up this season and someone else win it. But of course, it is more than natural to expect that Manchester City will be the favourites to win another Premier League title. So let me know your thoughts on the bookies' predictions in the comment section below. How accurate do you believe this 1-20 is? A bit like the AI predictions. I can't complain with a lot of it, to be honest. I think the bottom half writes itself. You know, maybe there's a slight disparity over who will go down, and then you get into the top half, and the rest, yeah, top 3, top 4, apart from Chelsea, sort of writes itself. But we'll see. Here's hoping for a few surprises or two, And yeah, hopefully someone comes out of nowhere and really surprises us, shocks the league, and by these odds wins some people a ton of money. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit a like on this video and subscribe for much more football content to come throughout the season. A big thank you for watching. Do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.